agenda before I go to a PowerPoint presentation and just talk about how I became interested in trilobites and what they are. So I come from Cincinnati, Ohio, which is a fossil zone, and it has mostly limestone. So therefore the fossils are abundant there. And so I joined the local fossil club. I'm going to date myself in 1975. And when I joined the club, I was really interested in fossils and seeing what the area had. So one of the first fossil trips was to a trilobite location on the border in Indiana. So I went there, found my first trilobite and was hooked. So, 45 years later, I have a huge collection of trilobites and a strong passion for them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them, take you through the history of a trilobite up into what's happening now with trilobites and the business of collecting trilobites. So one of the first things I'd like to do is a trilobite, is such an ancient creature. It was in the ancient seas, and I'm going to show you a picture here in a second. But before I start that, I thought I'd introduce you to how the trilobite crawled across the seafloor, which is where it lived in its habitation. So what we usually like to do, and I'm going to show it on my picture. So if you can see my 3 fingers here, I'm going to use my 3 fingers over here, make it easier for you. If you put your fingers together like this, and then put your 2 fingers behind your middle finger, so they kind of look like this. See that? And like the side. And that represents the 3 lobes of the trilobite body. It had a lobe on the left, a lobe in the center, a lobe on the right, 3 lobes. And what it did is, here's how it would sit, and it would roll like this along the bottom of the seafloor, lakes, whatever water, and it would just crawl and crawl and crawl and gather its food. So I'm going to talk about that later, but just introduce you to that process because we're going to talk about it all the way through my presentation. So now I'm going to start with a PowerPoint. And I'm going to get that ready for us here. Can everybody see this?
No.
No?
Yes.
I can see it, Bambi, yeah.
I can see it.
Who can't see it?
I can see it.
Everybody? Pam?
No. Well, let's see.
Screen share.
Pam, it should be in like the big screen. I don't know if the main screen auto shows for you.
In the what screen?
It's like when Bambi shared it, it auto makes the screen big.
Oh, switches. I got it.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. So, I'm going to use this red zoom tool as my cursor as we go through this life of a trilobite through extinction and beyond presentation. So as I go along, hopefully keep your questions to the end because I may answer them later. If you could hold on, I'd appreciate that. So I'm going to start here with the life of the trilobite. And most of my information, I used this book called Trailing the Trilobites by Thomas Johnson. Tom is a friend of mine. He's written about 5 trilobite books now. He is from Cincinnati. I will talk a little bit more about him. I'll show you a picture of him here back in the 80s. And Tom had discovered the largest trilobite in North America just outside the Cincinnati area, and it was 2 feet by 18 inches, which is the largest one, and it's an isotolus that's ever been found in the States. So he had this big, huge presentation at the Smithsonian. I didn't use all the pictures, but there would have been about 10 slides of at least 10 rooms of his trilobite collection, which is really cool. And the Smithsonian still does have the large piece, but all the other ones are now in his home in Mason, Ohio. So I just wanted to give accolades to Tom. He mentored me for years. This is just describing the parts of a trilobite. the cephalon, the thorax, and the pygidium. I'm not going to get too technical through this conversation, but I will just say this is the head, the body, and the tail. The same things. And sometimes when you find trilobites, you're looking for all of those to be intact. This is the underside of the trilobite. It's a soft-bodied part, and so the outside is an exoskeleton, and the inside is just soft body tissue. They have all these legs underneath their bodies, which they're using for that curling position I was showing in the crawling. And each of them also have gills on them. That's amazing. Soft body tissue obviously is not restored, or so it doesn't fossilize. So when you do find any soft body tissue, it's rare. It has to be in just the perfect environment for that soft body to stay intact. This is a front view of a trilobite. There are thousands of trilobites, and I'll use different types through my presentation. But this one's a really good one that shows the schizocoral eyes. That's these things right here, there, and there. And this is the facial plate. So these eyes are schizocoral. What that means, there are hundreds of lenses here, each of them having their own cornea. So can you imagine the vision of this small trilobite? Trilobites molted. And one of the coolest things is to find a molting trilobite or pieces of it. So what they would do is they would molt, escape from their shell, and then they would scamper on, and the remains of their molt would be left behind. Many times as trilobite hunters find the left behinds. We find the body parts more often than we find the full body. I think that's because exoskeletons had time to harden a little bit before it got fossilized. This is showing an actual, on the left side here, a molting trilobite, starting to lose it here, and then what it would look like after it came out of the mold. As it continued to grow, it molts many, many, many times. The trilobites had quite a few predators. They were quite the delight in the bottom of the water and the ocean floors. And large predators would eat them. They would try to turn them over and get their small soft body insides. This is the mouth or jaw of the previous picture. This one, what it might have looked like. Right here to the left is the jaw, and then these are the claws that could grasp those trilobites. Another predator. Down here on the floor in the mud and in the waters, the trilobites would hide from these predators. One of the fashions and ways they used to hide was they would roll up. Again, I'm going to show you in my picture up here the rolling action. And they would crawl like this and they would roll up if they were startled. Protect themselves, protect that soft underbody. Here's an example of a predator on a large trilobite, trying to take a little bite out of it. You know, in science, we want to, I have these cartoons here for you that are extracted from Tom's book, but we always want to prove with facts. How do we know this happened? So we want to prove that with fossilization. Here's an example of a trilobite, and it's not really easy to see, but this cursor right here in my laser shows where there's been a bite print out of the shell. I would love to have found that one. I'm going to go through a few cartoons now that Tom did. I think they speak for themselves. So I'm not going to say anything about this. I'll just pause for a second so you can read it. Nobody can find me here. This is the proof. This is the cephalopod right here. And this is the trilobite. You can't see it very well, but it's right here. And so in the previous picture, there's the cephalopod, the trilobite, and gets in there. What's that? Let me say something. Okay. Everybody on with me? Pam, you with me?
Yes, I was just getting my volume up, so.
Okay. And if I need to speak louder, let me know.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. Here's another cartoon picture. You can see all these snails, and therefore another hiding place for trilobites. How do we know that? There's a snail with a trilobite in it. Again, love to have that fossil. It's the proof. Plants, many times crinoids. I have a collection of crinoid fossils. That's the stem up here of the crinoids, usually preserved. It's hard to get the plant part, but here is a fossil with the plant and the trilobite. So you know they existed there together. Ugly looking fish. I call this the metalfish. And it was a really strong predator back in these days of the early seas. Looked like this. Smithsonian has this. This is a photograph of it, of a jaw of this particular, and I always have to write this down, the particular fish, because it's very difficult to pronounce. It's a Dinkytiosterol. Dinkytiosterol. Okay. And let me go down a little bit. Another cartoon. I'll let you guys read that. And this. Okay. So that's their defense. That rolling up action, hiding in the mud, trying to stay away from their many, many predators. Meanwhile, they scavenge the bottom of the mud, getting their food as a scavenger. So that's a little bit of the history of trilobites. I could have gone on for hours about this and shown you many different things, but I thought I'd stay high level and introduce the trilobite and also how it lived. It lived along the ocean bottom, where it lived. Obviously tried to get into the mud and around plants or places it could hide. And then it molted, it grew that way. And so they start as little as maybe a millimeter, and they just grow and grow and grow. And some of them don't get bigger than an inch at full growth. And then as Tom proved, some could be as big as 2 feet, but that's the maximum of a trilobite. They were a relative, what we think, of a horseshoe crab, to give you an idea of that. Okay, these are the first trilobites I ever collected. They're not very impressive, but they were my first. These two, this one and this one, are rolled up trilobites. So there must have been some type of event or an occurrence that threatened the trilobite and it rolled up. And then it was immediately covered. So therefore it could be preserved and later fossilization occurs. So that's kind of interesting to see that it was rolled up. Whatever happened, it knew what was going to happen, a big tidal wave, a mud flow, whatever. These two, so again, I got these two in Indiana, near my home in Ohio. I got these two on my first trip to Utah when I moved to Grand Junction, and I went to Delta, Utah, which is world famous for their trilobites. And they have quite a few different species, but they're mostly known for this one, which is called the Arathia King Eye. And these two are different variations of the King Eye. And these are about an inch, a little bit over an inch long, so they're not very big. But still, my first, and I was excited. This is a picture of my first trilobite hunt in the U-Dig Trilobite Quarry, located outside of Delta, Utah, world famous again for trilobites. And this location is a pay-to-dig site, and you can pay by the hour, by half day, by full day, whatever your needs are. And then you have tools. They also provide tools, and you can go into the quarry and get trilobites. So I specifically was looking for a pyritized trilobite. I've never found one on my own. And so I asked the quarry owner, who actually gave me and Brad permission to come on a Sunday when there was nobody else there, and we got to go hunt for trilobites by ourselves. And he told us where to go. He showed us a little, before we went out, he told us about it, then left us alone and said, well, go over to that hill over there. You'll find them. It wasn't 15 minutes, and I found my first one, which is this one right here. It's difficult to capture the pyrite in the picture, but it's those little flakes of white that you see there. And then this is me in the pile that he told me to dig in, finding that trilobite. I have a hammer here. I'm also just looking around, trying to find them in this slate. It's all in this slate. Here's me later after I get my trilobites out. I'm washing them at our campsite there. That's what it looks like after I cleaned it. You can see the little specks of pyritization going on. And this is how it's preserved today in my cabinet, my display cabinet that's located behind me in this picture over here. I left it just like this, and I put it on a stand. This is another part of the quarry that Brad was digging in and showing you what we have to do to get to these things. You see they're in layers on this hard rock. You see all this broken shale. That's been previous collectors breaking apart the shale. So Brad has got a little piece right here, and he's cracking it with his hammer. As you can see, also uses chisels. And he's already gotten a part of a trilobite out of here, out of this rock. It just fell off when he cracked it. And then I'm going to go to this next piece. That's the piece. But often, when you crack trilobites or split them, they don't split entirely whole. You know where they split? Right on the trilobite.
Right.
Doesn't that happen, Pam?
Yes, all the time.
So when you get a good full body trilobite, it's not a common occurrence, but not uncommon as well. Maybe 1 out of 10. I now want to show you some of mine that I'm talking about collecting, and we collected in Utah, and I collected in Ohio and Indiana. But there's another way to also purchase, to increase my collection is by purchasing. I am unable to go to Morocco at the present time, although it is on my wish list. And many of the species of trilobites have been found in Morocco, 75% of them. And there are thousands of species there. This is one of them, the Coleopeltus Trilobite, approximately 350 million years ago. I'll be talking about that timeline a little bit later as well. But this is an antenna trilobite, which I think are really cool. They're very difficult to extract, as you can tell, and keep all the antenna and legs intact. There's another one with antenna, another Moroccan trilobite. Very difficult to get this antenna out of there without breaking them. This is a rare trilobite I have that's twofold. So it's 2 trilobites. They almost look hooked together by their tails, or pygidiums. And this is the other half of this. Is that amazing? This and this. They fold up together, top and bottom, fully intact trilobites from Morocco. This one is about 6 inches tall. It's an impression. So sometimes you get molts of trilobites. You get the full body trilobite with the exoskeleton present. And then you can also get impressions. And impressions are really cool to find too, because you can still see, first of all, there's 3 lobes here. This one, the center one, the left one, the right one. the head or the cephalopod with some shell, and then at the bottom, the pygidium or the tail. But it's so detailed. This is an example of my trilobite display case. There are 100 trilobites in there. Hi, Mel. So here you'll see some of the top research books and things I have. And like I said, over 100 trilobites here. I have another trilobite case that has my prime trilobites in them located behind me. I did not take a picture of that, but I'll show you it later. So one of the things when you're a trilobite collector, a fossil collector, a mineral collector, any kind of collector, you need to do your research. You need to understand the trilobite. Therefore, you know, first of all, if you are buying a trilobite, you want to know as much about them as you can so you know that it has not been faked. There is a terrible population of people out there that fake trilobites. They will get trilobites and put them together. They'll take portions of other trilobites and put them all together and make or restore a trilobite. They will also make molds and make them look real, but they're not even real. They're not. If you'll look at the bottom of the trilobite, you'll be able to tell that often. So there is a terrible business out there faking trilobites, because some of these trilobites can go as high as $10,000. So most of the ones I purchase are under 1,500. I usually go from maybe 300 or 400 to 15 in my collection. Often looking for the more expensive ones, but don't have the money right now. So these are research books that I try to study and learn about these trilobites before I purchase them. Also, I have this Index Trilobites of North America. There's this long list here, thousands of species on the left, based on their time periods from the Cambrian all the way up to where they were extinct at the Permian. So at the mass Permian extinction, trilobites are gone. Wah. So again, this is the Permian, this is the Cambrian. So they first appeared about 540 million years ago. In the Cambrian, they became really prolific during the Paleozoic era, which is these different periods. And then again, at the Permian period, they die out with a mass extinction. Therefore, the only way to get trilobites are in the fossilized state, and you either purchase them or you collect them. If you're really lucky, you'll find one that hasn't been identified, like this one, and you'll get to name it. This is not a real trilobite. I made it out of clay, and I call it Bambiite. I found it, I made it, I get to name it.
I hadn't seen that one before.
You haven't?
Ah,
My desk. Okay, I want to go back and talk about the presentation a little bit and talk about some other things. So I'm going to try to stop sharing my screen. Oh, hi, Pam.
What?
And Christina, can I get me on full screen, or can I just talk? I don't hear you.
Bambi, while you're
Bambi.
talking,
Yeah.
it will show you as the main presenter.
Oh, okay. Those are sheep. So I can just do that. I'll just do it. Okay. There we go. Sorry. Things around the sides of it where someone has taken a dental pick or something and tried to place little pieces in it. And it'll be just really obvious. It looks like a puzzle put together. But then there's others that are really good at what they do and you can't tell the difference. So what do? I rely on my experts. If I see a trilobite that I want to buy and I'm not sure if it's real, I take a pic and send it to one of my trilobite friends. I have 3 people I can do that with and say, do you think this is real? Blah, 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 blah. Or, you know, what I'll do is I will find a reputable dealer that I've dealt with before, which is my avenue. I have 3 trilobite dealers I buy from. So that's how I feel pretty confident that I have authentic trilobites in my collection. Another thing is the price. If you see a trilobite for $1,000, it's probably real. If you see one for up to 500, based on the quality of it, if it's a spiny trilobite, I would hesitate, but there are still some in hundreds of dollars. But again, price is a good factor. If you see one really inexpensive, it's not real, I'll guarantee it. As you've seen before, in these spiny trilobites, they take many, many hours of prep time and preparation, and even the Moroccans can't sell them that inexpensively. Anybody have any questions? I am finished with my presentation.
I had a question. On one of the first